with forward-facing sonar to see this more and more, especially I feel like later into the spawn, that there are fish spawning out considerably deeper than we ever thought possible. Back out there a little bit, really look for those dark spots and places that look like where a bass should set up to spawn. Take a couple of those baits. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And this month's technique of the month video for April, kind of going a little bit off of what we did based on last year. You know, last year I talked about catching really shallow spawning fish and a couple baits and stuff to target those with. But for this year, wanted to talk about spawning fish again, because I think that's really applies in this month of April on a lot of the country. And for you all north of us, it's going to be coming your way pretty soon. So yeah, but spawning fish, but actually talking about fish that are spawning a little bit deeper and ways that you can target those, because it's certainly not always that fish are spawning up in that really, really shallow water. You know, just depends on a lot of factors, honestly, and we'll talk about that some. But yeah, this month, technique of the month this time go around is deep or deeper spawners and kind of catching those fish. Let's talk a little bit about why fish spawn where they spawn on any body of water. Okay, you know, a big factor and stuff that I've seen, one is water temperature, two is cover availability. I don't really know of any other ones right off. that's kind of the two big factors in my opinion that really depend on where fish spawn. Well, I guess another one would be water level, you know, water level fluctuations, you could say. Because fish that may pull up and spawn really shallow, but then the water rises, well, now that fish is spawning a little bit deeper than where it had planned on, or vice versa. You know, I feel like a lot of fish that if they pull up and start spawning, the water drops. I think those fish a lot of times will actually just abandon that bed altogether. Sometimes they have to, I guess, if the water fell too much. But definitely the water temperature and the amount of cover available, and then if you were fishing for spawning fish and then the water was coming up and kind of covering them, would obviously make those fish be spawning a little bit deeper than where they initially planned. But the deal with that, so water temperature, generally the first wave of fish that pull up to spawn are going to spawn the shallowest. Well, that's because the water that is warm enough for those fish to be spawning in, is going to be pretty shallow. You know, that top foot, 2 foot of the water is going to be warmer than that water is down there 4, 5, 6 feet deep. So you may have that surface temp you're reading, you know, 60, 61, maybe even 58. That's right up in that, you know, top foot, foot and a half, 2 feet of the water column. That's kind of at the bottom edge of where those bass want to be spawning anyways. You know, as it gets a little bit later in the spring and your surface temperature is reading 64, 66, well, down there 3 or 4 or 5 feet deep, that water is still at least 60 degrees or more, and those fish, you know, don't mind to spawn a little bit deeper. The other part of that certainly is cover availability. If you've got really good cover and really, really shallow water, those fish are going to go to it and they're going to use it, even if the water temperature is a little bit warmer. You know, if you've got good grass, let's just say flooded grass or something, but it's only 18 inches or 2 feet deep, and then out in front of that is just slick and maybe an occasional stick or something like that, those fish are going to get in that really shallow water, and the majority of them are going to use that heavy cover to spawn in. If you've got cover that's out in a little bit deeper water and you don't have much up around the banks, it's really slick, it's really sparse, those fish are going to wait. They're going to wait for that water to get a little bit warmer, and then they're going to use that deeper cover to actually spawn in. So that's kind of the one that we're going to talk about, is those situations where you see those fish spawning, or you just expect them to be spawning, but maybe you can't quite see them. You're not seeing a lot of stuff up super shallow, but it's like, man, you know, the water's 62, 64, whatever. It's the time of year. It's April. These fish should be spawning somewhere. Where are they? That's kind of what we're talking about here, because when they are out a little deeper like that, a lot of times you don't see them. You don't actually see what's going on, but you may be fishing this way and catching fish that you didn't realize were spawning. So that's kind of what we're going with. A lot of that, and I think of my experience around here in this part of the world, a lot of that is actually fishing just something that looks like a dark spot or looks like a light spot. You know, I'm going through a cove, And there's some, you know, especially if you've got any type of cover out there, you've got either deeper dock posts, those are great places. You've got stumps that are out, you know, where you can just see a little bit of stump, or you've got a little bit of scattered grass starting to grow a little bit. Anything that's out in that water where you can't quite see the bottom really well, but you can just tell there's something different. It's a dark spot, again, a light spot, something else going on out there. And then taking one of these baits or both of these baits at different times and seeing if one is going to outperform the other and fishing for them. So two very simple rigs right here. Of course, a Wacky rig, favorite all-time spring, you know, around the spawn fishing setup, and then a Shaky head. That Wacky rig, that's a Bass Pro Wacky Sticko is what I've got there. That's one of the red line VMC weedless Nico hooks. You know, just an excellent setup. But the deal with that Wacky Sticko, you can tell it's a pretty bulky bait. It's a pretty heavy bait. It's got a lot of salt in it. You know, if those fish are really shallow spawning, I like a smaller, or not necessarily a smaller, but a lighter weight worm. That Bass Pro Finesse worm is a thinner, lighter worm. It doesn't sink as fast. That Wacky Sticko, it gets down there pretty quick, to be quite honest. I mean, it'll get on the bottom in 3 foot of water in about 4 or 5, maybe 6 seconds. It sinks pretty quick without any additional weight to it. Where that Finesse worm, man, that thing sinks really, really slow. So I'm only going to fish it if I'm, you know, less than 2 feet deep, never more than 3. When you're fishing for those fish that are out a little bit deeper, just on those dark spots, you want to make sure that you're using a heavier bait because it's going to allow you to be more efficient and get to those fish a little bit quicker. Kind of along those same lines is why I'm going to throw a Shaky head. An 1/8 ounce, maybe as light as a 1/16 if I'm really wanting to have a little bit more glide to it, but usually an 1/8 ounce is what I'm going to go with, and that's the VMC rugby head. That's, man, that thing just works so good. It's so weedless, and I'm able to fish a bait like that 4-inch Bass Pro Sticko on it. It's a little bit bigger bodied bait, but because of the gap in that hook, I'm able to hook those fish really well still. So just a dynamite little setup, extremely weedless. I can throw it right in a brush pile or lay down, skips well for under boat docks and that kind of stuff. But that's the setup I like on it. You may even be able to tell I've caught some on that particular worm. Sooner Run is some of my favorite colors in both of those. Green pumpkins, all your natural colors is what you want to use in those. But again, that little 1/8 ounce rugby head, 4-inch Bass Pro Sticko. And the deal with that is obviously it's going to sink, you know, definitely faster even than what that Wacky rig will. And I'm able to throw that out there, and I may fish 2 or 3 pieces of cover in one cast. You know, I may skip it up under a boat dock, fish it out in front of a shallow boat dock, and fish, you know, a stump or something that's out there. But I'm able to target fish with that thing really quick. Throw it in there, let it go to the bottom, shake it a few times, right where I think a fish should be, reel it in and make the next cast. So the deal with that for me, it's not like I'm going in and I'm trying to comb a whole cove and fish every inch of it, where I'm really wanting to drag that thing back the whole way along. I'm wanting to go in, pick a target. I see a dark spot, I see a light spot. Here's a corner of a dock, and here's this post. Throw it in there, let it go to the bottom, fish it, try to fish it, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 feet, reel it in, make the next cast. Because a lot of your bites are going to come on that initial drop with both of these baits. And that's why having something that sinks a little bit faster is going to trigger more bites versus a really slow sinking weightless bait all of the time. Even though that Wacky is weightless, it definitely is a little bit faster sinking version of it. So that's kind of my thought process, is going in there to where I can pick an area apart. I can make several casts. I'm not fishing the bait a great distance. I'm just trying to really pick those targets apart with this technique and this time of the year to hit those places that are high percentage places where I think those fish are spawning. Nice thing with this, for both of those baits, I fish them on the exact same setup. So that is a Johnny Morse Platinum rod and reel, spinning rod, spinning setup, 7-foot medium action. Actually, it's a 7-1 medium action rod. It's a size 30 in that Platinum reel. 10-pound test, Bass Pro Hyper Braid, and usually a 10-pound test XPS fluorocarbon leader. If I'm in definitely a little bit heavier cover, places where I'm, you know, I've got a chance to catch a lot of fish over 3 or 4 pounds, or certainly a chance at, you know, hooking a 5, 6, 7 pound fish, I'm probably going to go with 12 on that XPS fluorocarbon leader. I don't feel like it hurts the number of bites I get, and the difference in 10 and 12, I almost can't break 12 on the spinning rod setup. It's, you know, if a fish gets me wrapped up or something with 10, you got to be pretty careful with them, man. With that 12, you can put a lot of heat on them and not have any trouble. So 10 pound braid, 10 or 12 pound leader, 7 foot, 1 inch, medium action rod. That is what you need for both those techniques, both of those baits out there on the water this month. But don't be discouraged. If you're out there, you know, and you're thinking those fish should be spawning, but you're just not seeing the evidence of it up really shallow. But that water is, you know, at least in the 60s, 62, 64. If you're seeing that kind of water temperature, there probably are some fish spawning somewhere. Look just a little bit deeper. And the thing is too, the further you get into the year, the deeper those fish are going to end up spawning. I know I've caught fish that I could never see. You know, I've got 2 feet of visibility and fish are in 4 or 5 or 6 feet of water. I've caught fish out there where there's no chance of me seeing them, but yet I'm certain those were fish that were spawning. And we're able to, again, with forward-facing sonar, to see this more and more, especially I feel like later into the spawn, that there are fish spawning out considerably deeper than we ever thought possible, you know, for what our understanding was. But there definitely are fish that spawn a lot deeper than we realize. And, you know, so just back out there a little bit and really look for those dark spots and places that look like where a bass should set up to spawn. Take those 2 baits. You'll be successful out there on the water this month.